Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. I thought today we could talk about what the US government spends money on currently. When I did the video about the big, beautiful bill, the numbers are like, whew, you just sit there and go, what? So I started looking into it a little bit, and I thought we could just go over it. I'll try to make it, simple. I'm not a economist, a political scientist, a government expert. I'm just somebody who Googled around. I Googled around and found out. So I thought we could just take a look at it. The budget that we have to look at really right now is from 2024 because we don't have the new ones, but we do know a little bit about what will be added. But maybe won't go into that. We'll just talk about the budget as it stands, last year. So we have the basic idea, concept. So the first of all, the total spending for 2024. Take a guess how much the U.S. government spent in total. Are you ready? I don't know how to write the number, so we will just write it like this. $6.4 trillion. But we're a very large country, so okay. So that's the total federal spending was $6.4 trillion. So the first thing that we spend money on is mandatory spending. And this takes up 63% of our budget. And this is mandatory, meaning it's under current law that this money has to be spent. And part of that is Social Security. And one thing about Social Security is not a welfare funded program. It is funded through payroll taxes. That's why when you get your paycheck, it will have Social Security tax taken out. Or even like for me, I'm self-employed, but I still pay into Social Security. So we're all paying for that. And that makes up 1.4 trillion. Oops. I'll just put trill. You know what I mean. And then there is Medicare. Also, you pay into Medicare. Medicare is for older people. Just in case you don't know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is for the older crowd. I'm not sure what the age is right now, but I know I think they just raised the age. Anyway, I won't get into that. I'll have to do a separate video because I don't know the details. I'm not that old yet. Okay, so we spend about 1 trillion on Medicare. And then there are the programs Medicaid, which is for lower income, CHIP, which is for children. What does it stand for? Children Health Insurance Plan, maybe? I'm not sure. And this also includes parts of the Affordable Care Act, which the federal government gives money, I believe, to the states. And then every state sets up their own affordable care websites. Like somebody had mentioned to me, their states is called Huskies. So every state has a different name for it, which is kind of confusing because then a lot of people don't even know they are on possibly a form of Medicaid, even though they are. Because they keep calling it Medicaid, but if you're lower income and you're on any sort of state-run affordable care insurance, then you're probably part of that. Now, there's a secondary thing that if you're not low income, you might get premium tax credits from your state's website, which they're also, and they expire at the end of 2025, those premium tax credits that you might get towards your insurance. And that's actually what I use. So I'm hoping they'll expand that. Okay, so this is Medicaid CHIP, and the Affordable Care Act is $616 billion, not trillion. And then there is like other mandatory programs they spend about $635 billion on. And these include things like SNAP. They have federal employee retirement benefits. So like, after you've worked for the government for, years, you get benefits after. Unemployment insurance, VA benefits are included in that. So these are all benefit. I never know how to spell benefit. These are all under the mandatory. Okay, so that's 63% of our budget currently. Now, I feel like I have two cards. I do have two cards. The next thing is our discretionary. They call it Hold on, I gotta think for a second. I can't write this word and talk at the same time. Discretionary. Okay. Discretionary, we spend 27% of our budget on. Now, this includes defense. Which we spend about $850 billion in 2024. And that's, all the military paying for not just the military salaries, but like the Pentagon, the equipment, weapons, bases, just all the military stuff. And then we have non-defense. Which we have about 920 billion goes towards that. And that would include things like education, Department of Ed. So defense is military. I mean, we know that, right? Under non-defense, education, public health. Transportation, which includes roads, bridges, all the things used to get from place to place. The national parks are in here. Scientific research is in here. So that's everything else, basically, is non-defense. So we have defense and non-defense is 27% of our budget. The other kind of interesting thing that we pay quite a bit, in fact, it's 10% of our current budget, is interest payments. I'm not going to be able to fit it, am I? And this is amount of $870 billion. And that is for our national debt. So that's national debt. So if the debt goes up, then the interest, I think a lot of us have had loans with interest payments, and you know how they can compound. And I don't know if the national debt has compounded, or what do they call that? Yeah, compounded interest. I don't know. But anyway, so that's 10% of the budget. So there is basically the U.S. budget. We have mandatory, which includes Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, all that. That's 63%. Discretionary, which is defense and non-defense, at 27%. And interest payments at 10% of our budget. So there you go. So I thought maybe just to make this like visual for some of us like me, I will do my best to draw you, come on, Now, when I say do my best, I'm not that good. I'm not an artist by any means. Okay, but I made a circle, so I feel pretty good about that. And then I will use this Pokemon card to try to create, let's see, we'll put a dot in the middle. And then we will make a line. All right, so what would be 14%, you guys, about? Oh no. Maybe I should have thought this out. Okay, so we have 14% is going towards non-defense. You guys remember what that is? That's like the Department of Education, national parks, public health, all of that. Slightly smaller, but not much, is 13%. And this is as of 2024, okay? This is going towards defense, which is the military. By the way, all the immigration, the ICE and everything, that goes under non-defense, not defense. I'm pretty sure I looked that up. Yeah. Military is defense, but ICE and immigration is non-defense. So we'll talk about it in a minute. We don't know. Okay. So then a little smaller cut of 10%. How messed up is my thing going to be? I don't know. Is, well, actually, let's see. That is like SNAP and federal employment. So that's like other mandatory. And then we have another 10% cut. I'll explain this all once we're done because this is messy. Is Medicaid and CHIP and some of the ACA. And then a little bigger cut of 16% is Medicare. And then, let's see, we want one probably right about here. Does that look right? Yeah, that's pretty good. 22% is Social Security. And 15% is interest on our debt. What do you think? All right, so now I was trying to kind of get a feel for like what are the big changes once the big beautiful bill goes into play. And I'll be honest, it's hard to map it like this because we're looking at 1 year right here. And like immediately, the big beautiful bill, which I know they've renamed it, but I forget what they renamed it, and I enjoy saying big beautiful bill. It is kind of funny. Adds, okay, so BBB is going to add 150 billion to defense. And 150 billion to ICE, border wall security, etc., which goes under non-defense. So these two will be add a little bit to, but I'd have to do percentages, and I don't know. Now, it does take money from Medicaid and Medicare, but the way it works is it's over it is going to basically subtract This is what they're saying. 1 trillion from Medicare and Medicaid, but that is over a 10-year period. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of hard to put it on the map here. And this doesn't begin until after the midterms, while this begins immediately, or as soon as they can, get that funding in. Immediately. I can't spell that word, sorry. So yeah, so trying to figure that out, it's a little beyond my pay grade. Okay. This turned out pretty good. I'm not hating on it, actually. So it is kind of interesting because, like, right now we are spending, what did I say on interest? Where is it? 870 billion on interest. Okay. On the Department of Education, we spent 80 billion. And on the Department of Transportation, we spent 90 billion. So those two together are less than the 870 billion of interest. That's why people are very worried about the national debt going up, because it's already ridiculous. And to be clear, this is from many different presidents. I'm not blaming any single president. This is messy. So, I don't know. The funny thing with taxes, I know so many people don't want to pay. I mean, who wants to pay taxes? I don't want to pay taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. But what taxes pay for are our roads, the bridges that are falling down in this country. That's infrastructure. We have to pay for these things. You want to have clean water, you got to pay for it. Libraries, FEMA, veterans care, having food safety inspectors who go around and make sure your food doesn't have E. coli in it. Support for disabled people. Like, all these things have to be paid for. So I don't really get, like, that if nobody pays their fair taxes, how do we pay for all this stuff? And I guess I just feel like right now, like the whole tariff thing, for me, it's too much of a wild card, because, well, you guys know, I don't have to say, but because they've been coming and going and it's unclear. And while they could raise some revenue, I would wonder if they will slow trade. And if the goal of the tariff is to get things made in America, and if that goal were to work, then how are we paying for all this government spending? We have to have taxes. I don't know. I don't really get the government. Somebody explain it to me. Anyway, like I read, and I don't know, I don't know, but that the tariffs could raise 250 billion. I think where they are at the moment. But they have given, okay, so they could raise this much. But from what I could see, they have given you guys aren't going to believe this, trillion in tax cuts. So how does that math? How is the mathing? I don't know. So there we go. There's where the U.S. government's spending their money. So it's something to think about when you're thinking. I don't know. Why do you need to know this? Because you should. Because Americans should know. And the other thing is, the government needs to start being more wise with us, the taxpayers' money. Like, it shouldn't be wasted on stupid things. And I know that's part of like what Doge was doing, but in my opinion, Doge went about it all wrong. You don't go and just start firing everybody. You go to the top and you say, we're going to really analyze your books and we're going to look at what you need to improve, you know, just like a business. Why is the government? I just don't understand what's happening. It's like so much, it feels like amateur hour to me. I don't get it. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. So, sorry, I think I gave opinions. I try to stick to the facts, but it's frustrating, isn't it? All right, so we have the mandatory spending at 63% of our budget. And things that are mandatory are things like Social Security, because we have payroll taxes that are paying for that. Medicare, because we all pay into that. Medicaid, CHIP, and right now the Affordable Care Act, because they've been voted into law. And then veterans benefits, SNAP, which is nutritional. It goes to like school lunch programs, to poverty level income. I don't know all that. And then federal employee benefits, like their pensions and I don't know, healthcare, things like that. Okay. And then we have our discretionary spending. And currently, we are spending 27% of our budget on that, and that includes the military and defense, and then also non-defense spending, which includes things like the Department of Education, Public Health, the Department of Transportation, national parks, scientific research. I'm trying to think what else, because there are other things in there. I can't think of what else, but basically everything else. And then we spend 10% on interest payments, which we spend $870 billion on interest payments. Okay, so there we go. U.S. government spending $6.4 trillion, mandatory, discretionary, and interest payments. And here's our little graph. So, I don't know, what do you guys think? Kind of interesting. I don't know how interesting, a little bit interesting. All right, I'll talk to you soon. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. much. Well, we have interest at 15. We have a defense at 13, and then the non-defense at 14. We have our Medicare at 16 and our Social Security at 22. And then Medicaid and CHIP at 10 and other mandatory things at 10. So, and these other mandatory are the ones that include education, health, transportation, housing, national parks, science research, a lot of important things, 10%. And non-defense was no, I said that wrong. Non-defense is the education, public health, transportation, housing, national parks at 14%. The other mandatory is SNAP, federal employee retirement and veterans benefits, unemployment insurance, Medicaid, CHIP, ACA, parts of the ACA, which is the Affordable Care Act, which is the insurance you buy through your states. Usually they have a website where you can pick different insurance companies. That's the ACA. It used to once be called Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act. A lot of people are on it and don't even know they're on it. We have Medicare, which is what people over a certain age are on. And I wish I had taken note of the age. I don't know. I think it's 65. It might be 65. And then Social Security. Interest on our debt. Non-defense, and then defense is the military, the Pentagon, the weapons, everything that we need to run the military. So, and this is all for